Okay, I want to welcome everybody. It's 4:30 to the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Policy Draft Committee. Tonight, we have agenda to discuss, appointment of administrators other than the superintendent, public participation at board meetings, search and seizure, and then we have our tracking sheet that we want to make sure we go over and update. At this particular time, that's the planned agenda. From the floor, I'd like to ask, is there any other items that need to be discussed? And that the arrangement that we just, I read them off, is that correct? And okay with everybody to follow them in that procedure? Okay, that's great. Well, with that, what we'd like to do is actually acknowledge everyone that's here for the public. We can start we'll start at the end over here. That's
Holly Van Shasberry, citizen.
Lori Mulhern, Bennington resident.
Lisa Poplaski, admin assistant, SVSU.
Sandy Foster, principal, Woodford School.
Dave Barrow, the high school.
Bruce Lee Clark, the CDC.
Bruce Lerman, North Bennington Grade School District.
Jackie Kelly, BSD.
Dick France, Woodford.
Leon Johnson, Mount Anthony.
Jim Cupting, Southwest Supervisory.
Okay, and so we know we have everything's been taken. We have representative from the. Okay, good. The first item for discussion, at least the first item I skipped over the agenda, is public comments. If we wanted to have, and that was the time to have things that we had not included on our agenda that we can probably put on here, because this is a working committee, a task force that work on particular policies, and so if we name them, we can try to work on it. If none, then we would proceed on to the first policy that's on our agenda is policy 4020, which is appointment of administrators other than the superintendent. And that particular policy is up on the board so that everybody can see it right now. And the highlighted areas that are in yellow or gold is what we had added in from our previous reviews of the policy. And so, who has comments or some adjustments or something that needs to happen to that particular policy in here?
I think one of the complications with this was that it went to the SVSU and there was so much for strikeouts and highlights and different colors that people weren't really sure what the final structure should look like.
Okay, that seemed to be going around in circles, because some of the, when we do send it out in the final, we get the comment from people to say, well, what did you take out?
Right.
And so, and then we said we can strike it out, we can highlight it, we can put it in italics, and it still have comments. Bruce, you got?
Yeah, I think if we, at least if we tried it the way in which it's done routinely in a legislative session, which is there are no highlights at all, but anything that is stricken has a strike through, and anything that's added is in italics, and that's it. Then I think it's at least slightly easier to read. I'll admit it's not easy, but at least that we don't have the multiple variables of colors of highlights, and if that's the only problem, I thought we had pretty much finished this one, and if that's the only problem, I was like, well, let me suggest that just be the uniform way we do this, that we don't worry about highlighting anything. We didn't used to do that, and that we just, anything that's in addition is in italics, anything that's taken out has a strike through it, and then it's easier to read. But I will admit, it ain't necessarily easy.
Yeah, because of the different boards want to see and understand what was there and what they
Sure,
wanted
I mean, that's
along
what,
that
that's
line.
why
So that's-
in the legislature, that's how it's essentially done.
uh,
Lisa,
anybody-
is that certainly possible?
Absolutely. I have no problem with that.
It would make it easier, I think.
Okay, so what we're saying is, no highlighting, because that's, so it throws everybody off.
I
New,
think it does.
new material added is to be italicized,
Right,
and materials to be removed would be strike through.
right. And there wouldn't be anything, you wouldn't end up having other chunks that are in bold for no particular reason other than it's easier to see them in bold, like line 16 and line 18.
So when it goes around in terms of the process now, this is when it's going around as a warning.
Right,
After it's been to everyone for a warning, then we are having to go back for an adoption. At
Right.
that point, should we still be showing all of this in this, in terms of,
Clean document.
Make it clean.
it gets, we want it to be clean, I just wanna make sure
I
that
think the board members can
Yeah.
speak to that better.
after, yeah, after it has been through the process of
Makes sense.
the warning, and everybody has did a warning, then when it comes back, before it goes back out again, it needs to be cleaned up. For,
You're
Can I-
adopting
The
a
adopting.
final, you're adopting a final
Can I
document.
ask one thing though, because sometimes after it warns, changes are made.
it would come back here then. I mean,
Right.
If
So in
the-
other words, there are more changes that would be made
Yeah,
that boards wouldn't see. If we're sending out clean for adoption, I'm just, thinking.
Yeah,
at that
Mhm.
point, if we send it out clean, if there are changes made after the warning, they're not gonna know what those changes are.
They,
you're right.
Yes, I'm not.
I think that's how we got into these colors,
well,
Bruce.
what I would be doing, I would be saying is that once they've warned it, if there are changes made after the warning, if they're editorial only, they're not substantive, we don't usually, it doesn't matter. If
Okay.
it's substantive, we actually go out for another warning.
Right,
And in which case, then you would just have the new change and nothing on a clean document. That this is a new, this was, they'll have record, help me out.
We got you.
Because you guys are board members. You have the old one, this will be a clean one with the new change.
Okay,
And it seems to me you'd still follow the same process for rewarning of this new policy,
Right.
essentially.
well,
Does that make-
if it's
does that-
if it's
if it's
such
substantive.
as, that we figure, that we show that there has been a significance when you talk about something.
Right.
A significant change in
If it's
the
substantive and
policy.
not grammatical.
Right, then
Essentially.
that, it makes
Right.
sense to do that. If
Right.
not, I'm just wanting to make sure, do we wanna remove that or leave it that way until it comes back from all of the boards and then back to SVSU for the final adoption, when it gets to the adoption process?
If you're asking Woodford to adopt a policy, I wouldn't want to adopt a policy that's loaded
Looks
with
like this,
changes and strikeouts. I want to adopt the final form.
right.
Okay,
Right.
Makes sense.
Bruce is
Me
saying,
too. I
but
agree.
Kelly's, oh, okay. So what we're saying then, when
That makes
we get through with the warning process, before, then if it needs to come back here and we make some changes or minor corrections and so forth along this line, we're ready to clean it up before it goes back out for the warning. Bruce?
Just, this is probably just to satisfy my sense of curiosity. Do all the boards, does it really work that way, so that all the boards go out and, my recollection is that this is not that even a process amongst the boards.
It's not.
So we're not gonna wait, so let's say Shaftesbury will approve, votes on it's warned at Shaftesbury. But will it always be warned at all of the boards before it gets cleaned up, or it's just, if Shaftesbury has done it 1 month, if it didn't ever even come up in North Bennington for whatever reason, I don't know why that would happen, but let's say it didn't, we don't wanna wait for North Bennington to meet again before it gets cleaned up. We can send a cleaned copy to each of the boards
That's
for
right.
its adoption, right?
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
That's what I'm saying,
Okay.
because the changes that may come out may not be substantive change.
We
I
can't
don't
adopt it
think that's
until
right.
every board has warned
That's
it.
right.
Every board has to
That's
warn.
right.
Because it could change.
That's right.
There,
If a board hasn't warned it, hasn't seen it, it could
Well, all I
change.
can say is we've done that lots of times.
right, it has, if the,
I don't
in certain
disagree with you.
circumstances, I give you some examples, a policy that pertained mainly to Mount Anthony, and they needed to get it out.
Right.
It came back as a warning before it went through as an adoption before it went through all the other boards
Right.
out here, and so then it's probably the time to say, let's don't do that, let's clean that up, if that's what we're saying. We're saying we don't want,
I don't think you want to have two different versions of the policy circulating for warning at the same time.
I hear you.
In other
Agree.
words, it should go through the cycle once. It certainly doesn't make any difference as far as the policy committee is concerned in terms of posting the changes and preparing the next one for warning.
Right.
But I certainly don't think you want two of them circulating for at warning level at the
for
same time.
warning and an adoption. Well, okay, that's,
Gotcha.
so,
Just want
just to clear that up then, and just to go back through it, making sure that before, when the policy is going out to all the different districts for warning, we'll wait, because that's why we got our tracking sheet, we'll wait before it, we move to the adoption process, that we have it all back from everybody along that line.
And just to let you know, with the policy committee meeting, so close at the beginning of the month, that's really speeding the process along because it pretty much allows me then to get every single board afterwards as, those meetings come up during the month. So it's the process is going much quicker rather than sometimes me missing a board because they've already met or a packet went out. So this definitely helps being
Good.
earlier.
So when we look at our tracking sheet, you'll see how it's easier to say, okay, and you look
Right.
down that, before it goes out to any,
Yeah.
for the warning, the adoption process, it needs to have gone through everybody. And if there is a reason why there's a policy being held, you can see that based on the tracking sheet. And what we're trying to do is get supportive information from any particular district that has something that needs to change so that we'll know exactly what it is and we can discuss it before we move on out there and move the policy along as fast as possible.
Yep.
Okay. So, with that, then, I think, when we look at the tracking sheet, we'll see where we are with that, with
Yeah.
this particular piece of this policy, but I wanted to make sure we came back here for that.
I do have one question or concern on this one. In line 58, when we talk about the superintendent resubmitting a new candidate for the administration,
We'll get to line 58,
yes.
okay.
We have, after "and additional candidates," we cleaned up the "and" to indicate that there would be a single candidate, but, so I see no reason for the parenthetical S after candidate. Line 57 seems to imply that the superintendent's going to recommend one candidate at a time, which I thought was what was intended. So he would never be
Right, multiple
suggesting
candidates.
additional candidates.
I think that was a cross out that didn't make it on there, that's all.
Okay.
I agree, yeah,
Yes, we do agree to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Editorial.
Thanks, Bruce. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. Now, what we have on, next on the agenda is policy 7300, public participation at board meetings. We started to send this policy out and to the different boards to continually get information and feedback on the structure that we have. I know it was some particular information that was North Bennington that Bruce had some that we wanted to look at.
Right.
And Bruce
And those
Lee
were-
and myself, we were looking at it, and while she's pulling that up, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that everybody understand that is necessary in order to make sure that all the boards have a structured document for being able to get information from the public and make sure they have a structured means to get the information results of what is required back to the public. And that the public understand that the business of the board has to be conducted based on the agenda that's been set, and that any additional items come in can be heard under a public comment section, and if wanted by the chair, that it be documented and structured for a next meeting or for actions, or that we incorporate those particular comments in when we have deliberation at the time we're discussing that particular policy. So with that in mind, what we're trying to do is make sure we meet those goals or those guidelines. And so I think when we first started out, we had missed some things when we asked, have the public participation take place. One of the things we really wanted to clear up is to make sure that we captured what it is that the public is saying, and that we document, say that get that to be documented in the manner as whether you're looking for some action from the board or not looking for action. If we're looking for action, then the chair needs to, make sure we have that documented, exactly what it is that you want from us, and then we can schedule it to be a response, or schedule it a committee or something to study whatever it is that means. So I think that we updated that particular part of the policy. Let's see here. Did you want to speak first, Bruce? For the one that's up here on the board, let's see, I'm looking now to see where we are.
Where did you get?
Procedure order. I didn't think it was anything in the statement of purpose. It was procedure. Should have been in the A, B, C, so let's see.
Just let me know if you want me, when you want me to move down.
Okay, I'm just trying to give everybody else a chance to look at that. I'm looking at A and B. I think the chairman. Okay, I think that's, does anyone have any problems with A, B, C, and D there? I think it may be in the next part when we start actually talk about the comments. So you can screw up, please. Yeah.
The comments are, line 15.
Line, you have something on line 15 you want?
No, but you were asking for comments in this.
Well, that's what
Line
I'm saying,
15.
comments, we've gone down the policy, the piece, section 3, public comments is the section that we wanted to make sure it did what we wanted to do.
Right,
And
but
in
there's a
ter-
statement on line 15 that you might want to look at first.
Oh, line 15,
Mhm.
okay. Jackie, let's see here. The school board and the prudent committee reserve the right to eliminate public comment agenda items when a meeting is posted as executive session only. Is that?
Doesn't need to be changed.
No, it doesn't need to be changed.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's okay as it is?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll go back to public comments now. And this is the part here that we wanted to make sure we made perfectly clear, and that it had all the substance to it that we wanted in there. Any individual desiring to speak should give his or her name and address. There is a reason for that.
Yeah.
We need to know who we're talking to and where they're from. And whether, if there's a group, whether the whole group is supporting the same idea, philosophy, because the board has to schedule them in, and if everybody's gonna say the same thing, we wanted to make sure we capture that. So, should give his or her name, address, and the group, if there is one, that they represent. The presentation should be as brief as possible, and and that's A.
Yeah.
This, okay, and I'm thinking, what did that's A. B, written remarks requiring board action regarding posting agenda items are accepted and will be shared publicly according to policy 7192. And that's policy talks about documentation that correspondence to the board in the form of documentation that comes ahead of time, and the chair has to look at it, make sure that it gets on the agenda item if it's appropriate, and get disseminated at the board meeting. That particular statement also eliminate the fact that somebody wants to come in the board and says, I got all of the certain, I'm gonna bring in 5 or 6 documents and I'm gonna start passing them around to all the board meetings and the members, and to get a discussion and a decision right then. That's saying that that can't happen. It's not to happen based on that.
Right.
Okay, so, anything else? Let's go on down, because I still hadn't got to the part that I needed to clear up here. Give me public comments. It all, well, C, knowing the rest of B is okay as far as I know of that, but we're gonna have to do something in here, in terms of, and I missed the part, what we wanna make sure of, and I'm trying to see where we wanna put that is, when there is public comment given, the chair should request of the person, of the individual that's making the public comment, what action it desires of the board. And I'm saying that's what we need to make sure gets in here. I thought we had did something along that line, Bruce, that we not.
That, you're talking about C?
Is it?
That doesn't address that issue.
I know, but that's what needs to happen.
Well,
Where did we put that when we were working on it somewhere?
I'm not sure we did. And the reason we didn't, I thought, was because there's no way to necessarily say that on every comment that the member of the public wants the board to do something.
Well, it may not. And so, for
So
example.
I guess, hang
Yeah,
on a minute.
okay.
I guess what I would say is, I would be, at least for me, I'd be reluctant to try to direct the chair to act in any way other than as the chair normally reacts. And so the chair would take a comment and say, okay, is there anything you want us to do as it resolves this? It would come naturally, but I don't think it needs to be ingrained in policy.
Well, that's
I
the
just
part
don't,
that
I guess
okay.
I would just be reluctant to put that into policy. I think that sort of cements stuff in ways that I would feel really reluctant to do. I would be reluctant to tell the chairs of the boards and committees and the Prudential Committee what it is they must do.
Well, that's, and I mean, we feel that way, but what I'm trying to do, make sure, I mean, and if we got a couple people in from the, what we want to do, and I mean, as the board, and whether the chairs agree or not agree right now on it, is make sure that nobody goes overlooked. We have new boards,
Right.
Turnover and so forth along that line. So we got a public comment being made. The chair may or may not, at the time, I'll be thinking that I need to make sure if there's an action to be taken. So I'm saying somehow we need to make sure that that is not buried and that it has some substance to it, so that when the chair, that the public will know that somebody's gonna take my action down, or make sure that if I provide an action item that is captured, and the chair will be the person to say, I got this, and maybe repeat it to say that's exactly what you're looking for, and then we can move on. Bruce?
That just strikes me as perfect information for administrative regulations. This would be a place where we give there might be a really appropriate ways to give instruction to board members and to chairs in the administrative regs that would empower what this seeks to do, which is to try to keep board meetings moving in such a way as that they are responsive to the public, but also trying to get their agenda. And that strikes me as a perfect place for administrative regulations, not a policy. That would be, and that's probably all I'll ever say about it.
Okay, that's true. Well, let's get
Doesn't
Jackie.
it quite say that I mean, when you take a question and it's considered, I would presume that after it's considered, somebody would say something, so it's kind of inherent in the statement.
It hadn't occurred that way, and that's why we're discussing this. It's just hadn't taken place, and what we're trying to do is make sure and that the public understands that we're trying to that our policy is taking into consideration that it has not been occurring that way, and we want to make sure we capture it some kind of way. So administrative regs could be one way of doing it. Dave?
How about if we went to line 40 and it says the presentation should be as brief as possible, indicating any desired outcome if possible. There's two possibles, you have to change one, but would that be a place to put it?
Yeah, let's see here.
Or does that say it?
40.
I don't know if it does.
The presentation should be as brief as possible.
Indicating any desired outcome. Maybe just leave it at
That's
that.
it, and that would be enough.
Well, that's what we want, indicating any
Desired?
outcome, and to indicate any desired outcome. Laura?
I understand, you and I both understand how these things, what's really been happening is that the action items get lost sometimes. And I don't know, Bruce, is there another place in the administrative regs that takes care of the action items that are generated? It should be through the meeting minutes, but sometimes when people come to the board meetings, they may have a question, and then it's, okay, well, it's usually directed, we'll get back to you, because if it's just a comment or a question, sometimes the board has to get back to that individual, or someone is assigned to get back to them, but maybe it doesn't happen for whatever reason. But I understand what Leanne is saying, because there have been questions, even from board members, that I know that kind of have been lost sort of and not come back for resolution, and losing those action items or losing that information is not advantageous, I don't think, to the functioning of the board, and I understand how we don't want to direct the board either. So is there a different way to capture it?
Well, when you said that, then that's along that line, it's true. I mean, the minutes, we're asking you to speak, and it goes into the minutes, but then the chair, and here we're talking about the chair's responsibility again, is to say, if what outcome that you're looking for is desired, and then say, well, the chair works with the superintendent to set the agenda. And appoint committees or whatever along this line, and other board members to make sure that they handle these things. So that, we're now getting into that and say to the chair that, here's an action item. When do you want to put it on? And who do you want to look into it? And vice versa. And that's the part that Bruce is saying. We don't want to put that in the policy right here for that. We want to make sure we do that in terms of an administrative regs as much as possible. And maybe that's the part that goes out, that every year annually, when we start to review policies and procedures in terms of training, this is one of those that definitely needs to go in there. I mean, that we need to cover with the board chairs at board training along that line. Is that? Yeah, and I understand, we don't wanna baby the chairs along that line, but we want them to know that we feel the passion of the public, and we want to encourage participation, we wanna structure it, and we wanna respond to it. Because that's the legal, method by which we can obtain information and what we was elected to do in terms of represent the public, and they have an input to provide certain things to us right at the meeting. Okay.
Right, and I just wanted to say that one of those examples would be like if a member of the public had a question that was, say, related to technology, but of course, at the board meeting, you may not have a representative available to explore that issue, so they may come back to the next board meeting or something to give that, but sometimes I'm not sure that gets captured, so that's one of those examples of when,
Okay.
if it could come back, it would be great to track it.
Yeah, and so we got a question about technology. Frank is not here, the chair. We look around and says, okay, Frank's not here. I think we're gonna ask the superintendent, we're gonna put this down, and we'll make sure that Frank's get that question and be able to probably provide an answer for us at the next meeting, if it's one of those that can come back the next meeting, or make sure that somebody contact you directly, but that's what should be documented in the meeting, in the minutes,
Right.
as to who's gonna be doing what. So when you come back the next time and say, whoa, I was right there, somebody says that person wasn't there, they were gonna have somebody else get to me, there it is, this person was supposed to do that, and vice versa. That's what we want to happen. Jackie?
Leon, on line 54, you could add, answers shall be to,
Jackie, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
So we want to keep that I put italicized at the bottom here?
Let's see here, this
Yeah.
is, the presentation shall be as brief as possible and indicate any desired outcome.
Yes.
Yes.
You can
Not
take-
ing,
You
but
can
other
take
than
away
that.
the and, okay.
Or it could do it that, yes, that either way works. You just don't need both.
Right. Which way we want to do it?
That's fine.
Okay, all right, so that's capturing what I was thinking we wanted to do.
Now it's
Okay.
Jackie's.
So-
Now Jackie
yeah,
is.
so then on line 54, 54, answers shall be deferred pending consideration and, considered for the action.
You know what
Oh,
I
I see
thought
where
this
she is.
paragraph was intended for? If
Okay.
somebody meets me at the dump and wants an answer to something, I really have to defer that to the whole board. I'm not empowered to
Mhm.
speak on behalf of the board. That's why I thought that paragraph started out
To be,
as,
I think you're right.
but it
Though,
doesn't.
a difficulty with that is it's reference to something that's not been posted as an agenda item. If you meet somebody in another venue, there's no way to know whether it's been posted as an agenda item or not.
Right.
So,
So
And-
it's
and-
kind of confusing, and I had a hard time with this section when I was looking it over earlier, because I tried to think of a scenario in which this operated, and I had difficulty. So again, if that, we might find different wording if that's what we're after, is to ensure that items that come up outside of the
That's not, that's,
agenda.
that's absolutely not what this is
And
about.
I know,
didn't think so
that's-
either,
yeah.
so I'm not sure
That
we
is
really-
in the conflict of interest policy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah,
but, can I,
yes,
since
Bruce,
I
go
was
ahead.
the one who refined this draft, I was the one that deleted all of that next part, which actually was related to outside of board meeting communications.
Right.
These are specifically, if questions are directed to the school board or prudential committee, and you don't even need members, on topics that have not been posted as agenda items on that meeting. This is
That's-
during the meetings.
This is
Okay,
live.
then
Okay.
you're, what the intent is not to engage, as I understood the intent of this drafting committee, was not to engage in back and forthness.
Discussions.
In discussions about stuff that's not on the agenda for which nobody has really been prepared.
That's correct.
That's, so, it might be, in the interest of deleting even more, one of the ways to deal with this so that if it read, if questions are directed by the public to school board or prudential committee, or to the school boards or prudential committee, and strike the word members
Yeah, 'cause
on topics that have not been posted as agenda items. And you could eliminate, again, by the school board or prudential committee, because we've already just mentioned them. Answers shall be deferred pending consideration by the full school board or and respective district supervisory union administrators. Basically, what you're trying to say is, you don't start responding to, let's say a group comes in and is interested in X.
right,
The response of everybody normally is to try to respond and make it seem like it'll,
The intent is to listen, take it under advisement, and put it on a future agenda.
and that's
That's what I'm talking
where
about. We're
you
trying to
wanted
get
that,
it.
and that's where that is.
okay, that's what I was wanting to make sure we
It's
captured.
there, it may not be artfully, I don't think it's still artfully read. So, for example, there are several more places one could delete stuff that would, since if you're eliminating the word members, that would be helpful.
So we gotta clean up some stuff here. Okay.
In other words, to the school board, they're I mean, I was thinking of the members sitting around the table, but, just get rid of the word members, delete, strike through.
And I think the reason that was in there, it was saying, the prudential
See if we can find a way to
committee
strike through without making more.
and members, and
highlights.
that's how that stuck together, but
Been
it was
posted, I
okay
mean,
to.
by the,
Okay,
Well redundant.
by the board or committee, and then you've done. Answer shall be deferred, pending consideration, and again, eliminating by the full board or prudential committee, you don't need that. And pending consideration by,
So we wanna get rid of all,
well, no. I have to think about what I'm wanting to say.
Okay.
What we want to be able to do is say, boards and committees should have a chance to talk about it at another time with administration before they come back with some kind of response.
That's what we want, so now we
Right,
gotta
so we
make
just,
that work
if,
somehow.
however that gets said is fine by me, but that's what I thought you wanted it to say.
Yes,
I don't
that's-
think it says that very artfully at the
Well,
moment.
a prime example would be, do you have enough room in your schools to have more children register?
Right,
And we couldn't answer that tonight.
That's true, but
Exactly.
how do we wanna word that in this section here to
you're
make
gonna
sure that
defer,
it's
you're not gonna
correct?
answer those questions.
You're not
So
gonna answer
perhaps
that.
they-
Pending consideration by administration and board.
Or why not just that it will be deferred until,
Following
to be
meeting.
considered at a following meeting?
Yep, that would be fine,
I think we want it a little bit more definitive and say
sure.
it will be deferred, within the next meeting or
Until the next.
scheduled, or
Next
you
schedule.
want to put on the agenda for,
Yep,
Well,
I hear you, I
let's
agree.
do one piece of it at a time.
No, I think
because
that's in essence
that's-
all, Leon, that's all part of the same piece.
Okay,
That's why, so Jackie, I like what you just said, I don't really, and I think, shall be
You wanna-
deferred pending consideration at the
by the next full,
at the next
Within
scheduled
the-
board meeting,
yes,
after, yeah.
yes.
that's
Because
it. Is
Yeah,
that-
that
that's-
puts it on the agenda.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's committing, that's a commitment to the
Right.
next school board now, I'm trying to see,
But
is
see,
that the right
won't
thing to do?
necessarily work, because
what
the
I wanted to
board
make-
chair sets the agenda. So what if you defer to the next meeting, and the board chair says, no, I'm not putting that on the agenda? When I meet with them,
Can that,
what do you
But a
do?
response could be, a response.
policy says you do.
Yeah, but the response could be at the next board meeting, if you still hadn't had time to research the correct find the correct answer. You could say that, so far we've gotten this far on that agenda item, and we'll have to continue to defer it to the next meeting.
So the rationale behind that is to make sure we don't
not
hold the
lost.
public in existential months out here,
Mhm.
is by not giving some directive to have that addressed at the next meeting in some form or fashion. Not that it's
It may
completed,
not-
but,
Yeah, wouldn't necessarily be.
okay. I think that,
Be interesting to see what that.
yeah, will
looks
be,
like.
for the rest of the boards and members and everybody will be interested in that. But I think that's okay. Let's,
Okay, so
so that we capture that way now.
I have concerns about tying the
The
chair
chair.
of the board to making a response at the next meeting.
I do too.
Even if it's only a furtherance of the discussion, because things come up.
Right.
And you know, are we talking about the next meeting, the next special meeting? You know, I think that's getting beyond policy, I guess is what I'm saying.
As soon as possible?
Can you just defer it to a future agenda? Is
That'd
not
be
specific?
my preference, but.
Okay, that,
Well, that's really,
I mean, that's
can I
why
just
I
say,
don't-
that's all,
That's-
yeah, it could be a future agenda in 2022.
Yeah.
I
so-
understand.
And and yes, I don't think that's the intent of the boards, and it's not the intent of the language, but
yeah, it's,
we're not gonna be here when this comes up in some way that's gonna be,
but we
funky,
don't wanna
but
tie, I mean, I hear
I
what you're
agree.
saying. You
I
don't
was
want the
saying
seniors
that
to be
earlier.
tired, and we don't want the public to have a perception
that it would
in
not-
our
that it's not being
documentation in this manner
Right.
that they are going to be put off and put off and put off.
Yep.
And so we're trying to take care of that public perception right here
Yeah.
with something that says, you're gonna hear from us, whether it's what you want to hear or not. I mean, whether this is what you really wanna hear, but it's to be addressed in some form or fashion by the next meeting. That's what we're saying. Whether we tell you that we formed a committee to study that and they'll get back in June, become public meeting notes and so forth along that line. Or, I mean, if the superintendent meet with the chair and says, we're not ready for the next meeting, but we can schedule that somewhere out here down the road and make sure that happen and make that part of the meeting.
The way it's written right now, I mean, if you take away the second school board and prudential
Right,
committee.
which you don't.
I mean, there's nothing that would prevent action the night that the board acts about it, because the vote, you always have the right to
Right.
take something under consideration that night. So if we read it, so back to, not been posted as agenda items by the school board or prudential committee, answers shall be deferred pending consideration by the full board. In other words, we don't want that give and take from individual board members. So the board could decide, the board chair could
Yeah.
decide right then, we're gonna take this under consideration right now, we're gonna have a debate about it and all that, and then answer back to the public. So it isn't always gonna be necessarily the next meeting either.
Right.
I'm not saying I have the language on how this is
Right.
gonna happen, but because that often does
Yeah.
happen. What we
Yeah.
wanted to limit for the length of meeting time was the debate back and forth from the
Right.
floor to the board,
Yeah.
Right.
but to give a timely answer to a question that's brought forth.
Exactly.
So how do we do that, everybody?
And answers shall be
Okay.
deferred in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I think probably in something like a timely fashion makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Answers shall be deferred in a timely fashion.
And until some,
but we're gonna hear over here, that's,
Hang on.
Laura, I mean, we can put that in, do you wanna put it in first and then we go back and read?
yes, let's not lose.
Okay, put it in and then we'll hear what you're gonna say.
Fashion, that
Wait.
doesn't-
I think
Until
it needs to go at the end of the sentence.
I put it at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Okay.
And then we'll see how
Yeah, I
it
think
fits.
that's better.
Manner?
Yep.
Okay, so we got that in the timer now, so let's see how that's set, that if I was reading it out there at the public and said, they're gonna get back to me in a timely manner.
What does that mean?
That doesn't mean anything to
That's,
It actually does have
It
some,
does, yeah.
it does have some concrete,
me.
it may not mean anything to you as a member of the public, but there actually is content to that.
But
In
you
other
do-
words, I mean, here's
Okay,
how I would
okay.
explain it. I would be explaining it so that if I ask a question about X, and it's a relatively simple question, and 3 months later, it isn't even appearing on the agenda, they have, I'd say at that point, the board has in fact violated its own policy, and I have a chance to go, and I can make that case in front of any judge in this state, because that's not in a timely fashion.
What is considered in a timely fashion?
It depends on the
Depending on
nature
what
of
it
the
is,
question.
of the
It
question.
depends on the nature of the question you're asking. That's
Because
why
what
I
if
tried to
it, what
say
if
it
it goes
that way.
back to, it's gonna take research by the administration, the board's gonna instruct the administration, you need to research this and
Right.
report back to us. That might not happen by the next meeting. But I think the intent is, it is
the intent. It
is,
does actually.
you know, as quickly as possible is how I read that, it's as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah, I understand.
and you have to
what-
show that.
Being that and so forth, but I was trying to make sure we had wordings that would be clearly, in this case, it may not be, and that's where we're clearly acceptable by the
Right.
public in terms of having something they can put their hand or teeth in. This
Right.
gives it gives the appearance of wiggleness in it, in the sense that we're saying a timely manner, but actually, we're saying, based on the question or what it is that the action to be taken depend on when we're able to get back
Right.
along that line.
You
Yeah.
need certain flexibility.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so,
think so.
go ahead, Laura, you got,
Well, it's just again, it's, to me, being one of those individuals, it's still no better, believe it or not, than to be put on the next, at a future agenda, or someone will get back to you. I'm still waiting for the answer to a question I put back probably about a year and a half ago.
In
So
which
it's
case
one
it
of
would-
those challenges that even I, as a public member, doesn't know what is considered timely. What may be timely for me and my interpretation of timely could be totally different for the board, you know? Because the board may not have it to be as a priority.
But
So
it-
it's kind of hard for me to understand how it would be timely without definition.
so you can't add, I'm just trying to make sure, is it room to add something else on there to make that, I mean, give you either or? It's
I don't think you can pull it off. But
Sandy,
Lori,
that's-
here's what I would say. I mean, I hear what you're trying to say, and here's what I would say about that. If in fact this policy with this language was in effect when you asked that question, the board would be in violation of it. I mean, a year and a half is not even close to in a timely fashion under anybody's reasonable definition. And I think it does allow you to, it does allow the public, not just you, but anybody, allows me to hold the boards accountable in a way that I think we want to be able to do.
Sandy, you
That's
got
what
the
I would
question?
And I agree with that, and like to add that there's also a trust in your board that they will come back and review it.
But they better do it in a timely fashion, in my
We
view.
we can give that a try
Right.
here and see how it works in terms of
Mhm.
it with the public
Well,
out
you
here.
you could add one more thing and say, in a timely fashion, placing it on the action agenda,
It's just on
List.
the agenda, isn't it?
placing it on an action list.
Mm,
But there's no formal definition of an action list.
No,
Right.
no,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
And
That's an
sometimes the
informal
things you're
task list that
asking
they
do
do.
not even go onto the agenda. It might be
Exactly.
as easy as you want the superintendent to meet with somebody, or you want
Exactly.
an
Right.
answer to go to the individual, or an email back to people. So it's
Yep.
not always the
Right.
question. I mean, it is a little vague, but but so is in public comment. You know,
Exactly.
you don't know what you're gonna be asked, so.
Right.
So I think, okay, and hearing all of this, I think this may be the most reasonable thing to try to put in here and see how we can work. And if for some reason this is not being managed the way it needs to be managed, then we probably may need to do something about administrative rigs.
Mhm.
It seems to me that that's also part of what the warning process is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we get comments or feedback from the individual boards or people who attend those meetings who indicate that's not strong enough language, then we try again.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Can
All
I
right.
just ask
Before
a
you move
clarifying
on, can I-
clarification?
You got a question
What-
here? I mean.
Well, yeah, the part that you're striking out, because we all agree it doesn't belong there. School board and committee members who approach individually or something. Does that appear somewhere else? Because that is important language.
It is important, Mike.
Yeah.
As you said, I think that's in the conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest.
Do we know
That
for
over
sure?
there.
Because I'm looking right now and I can't.
Let's
So,
see, let's see.
I would
Before
not-
we
I'm not
eliminate it
swear to
from
that.
our
The
memory,
board- The
no.
board's conflict of
Yeah.
interest policy.
I know we took it out because we said we didn't want board members going through that like chain of command instructions with.
And actually,
It has
this,
nothing to do-
that whole language doesn't have anything to do with public comments at board meetings.
Correct.
Right.
And that's why, you're right, it's not like it's not
I
true.
agree it doesn't belong there, but where is it?
Where is it? And it should be, if it's not in the conflict of interest one, it should be.
Right, so we need to verify that.
And I
That's
made
if
a
you're
note.
looking for
Okay.
a conflict.
Well, I don't know that we put that in conflict of interest, we said.
It may not be there, but if
No.
it
It
doesn't,
might
we
be
can
somewhere.
always add it.
Right.
What did you try to look for?
Wait a minute, what we were trying to do was make sure that information, where did it come from? We had it, we were discussing it, but everybody was saying that that's not what we want board members to be able to do,
It,
is go around and start giving everybody saying, okay, hit the principal, I mean, hit the teacher, or hit this particular person first, you get to this one, you get to that one, and
that's
you get
not
to this
even
one.
what this is.
That's not, no,
What basically this is, you know, somebody meets a board member, I meet
This
a
is
board
the dump
member at
story.
the dump.
yeah.
Yes, exactly, at the dump, exactly. I don't think Bruce can answer my question at the dump.
No, we can't. That's Laura, but we didn't want to provide instructions to them of that effect. That's
Right,
And
I just
there-
wanted to go back to this, just so I have clarification, that's all, before moving on. This is going to be relevant for not just the board coming back, but if the board requests or provides action saying, okay, we'll have so-and-so follow up,
Mhm.
that will also apply to them in a
That's
timely
right.
fashion,
That's
right?
right.
Not just the
Absolutely.
board
That's
or
correct.
committee members, but,
Yes,
or designee?
This provides the substance that we need to be able to get
Yeah.
that done.
And we're using tracking sheets or task sheets now at all board meetings, as you know. So if I'm given a specific instruction at a board meeting, it goes on to that task sheet for the subsequent meeting. So that it works both ways. One, I don't have a board member, well, we told you that last month. Well, no, it's not on the task sheet, and it also, well, Jim, we told you that last month, and it's on the task sheet. So that is the practice that we are using, and we take the notes during that public comment for that reason.
I don't know that, I mean, okay, that take care of that. But we were talking about this particular last part that was strikeout. I don't know that that's in the conflict of interest policy
I don't know.
piece out here. That was something that we wanted to do.
Communication
So
with
can
the
we put
board.
that on the agenda for
Yeah.
next policy meeting then?
Let me do the research.
Okay,
I think it's in a policy
I think so
someplace
too.
else, but I
I
just
do
need
too.
to do the
And
research.
it could be communication or
Yeah.
correspondence
I
with
think
the
you
board.
might be right.
Yeah.
so, okay, so let me,
I think that's actually where it is.
Yeah.
It's 7192, I think is where it is.
all right, well, Lisa wants to take that and do
Thank you, Lisa.
the
But I think you're right.
the follow-up on that. So we have an action item for that particular section of that policy, that's to follow up and find out where that comment is, in here in terms of just regular communication of 70,
He's right.
and the other policy.
It is in 7192, is this what we're talking
Okay.
about?
Yes,
There you go,
okay.
big guy.
Nick, pull it
Is
up
it?
here.
Yep.
7192 is,
Which is referenced
which is
here.
referenced right there, so we don't need to have it there.
Good.
Hold on now. Dave?
Okay, while we're talking about public participation, and with all due respect, I mean, should we be dialoguing with public people while we're discussing this, or are they relegated just to the comment section in our meetings? In other words,
Now, this is a working meeting here, this is a task force meeting. And it's to clarify and develop and gather input to form what it is gonna be passed on for the board to take action on. So we want public input and dialogue. I mean, we still have a structure here in terms of a chair and somebody that's directing the meetings and doing things, and group involvement and review of it, but we definitely would like to have, I mean, I don't think I'm trying not to have any dialogue back and forth between anybody. We try to make sure that you get recognized and it comes back between the person that's directing the meeting, the chair or something, and then we get clarification on it and move on.
I just
And then we
wanted
get
to
the
clear on that.
consensus to do that
Yeah.
and move on. But we want everybody that has some input to come before a task force and provide what information they could to help that task force structure a particular policy or procedure or documentation, I think. Okay,
Okay.
all right. Well, we're at the end, is that,
Yes.
that's the end?
That's the end. So,
Okay.
That,
I mean, the end of this policy, I
of
mean.
this
Yeah.
policy, not of the agenda.
Bruce Learman.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send this back to North Bennington
Mhm.
for next week. You think it'll go?
Which, I believe we already took care of that on the 8th.
No, it got tabled.
No, that was in the September meeting.
It was, I know we tabled it in the September meeting on the 8th.
North Bennington.
Right, that's what I meant,
Okay.
North Bennington. I was at the 8th meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
If it
September.
comes back as we
Maybe I don't have,
proposed
maybe
it.
I don't have those minutes.
I don't think you've got those minutes yet, because
Okay.
Laurie was not there and there were a couple of follow-up items.
Okay,
So Dick, was you looking at
As
things?
far as I
Well,
know.
I'm looking at the tracking sheet and in consideration of the fact that it's been warned by every board already without any changes that we made, does that mean we have to send it out again? Or are these now substantive changes?
These changes are, the intent of everything we were trying to do is what we wanted in there. And they shouldn't be a substantive line or warning of this all over again, because it's gonna go for an adoption. You still can stop at the adoption process.
Right.
so I think it's ready.
I think it's ready. I think you can make the changes. I would, if it were me, I would be keeping the words "in a timely manner" in italics. Just to
Yes.
let everybody know
Yeah.
that that's changed since they warned it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? According to
Yeah.
our previous
Yeah, that's what we're
discussion.
saying
Was
here,
there
and
another
again,
place where you had asked that,
I think we struck,
no, you had asked that
So-
it was kind of redundant that we had school board and
Oh.
prudential committee.
yeah, we have the school board
Up in
and prudential
A
committees
or in
twice.
B?
Okay.
It was in D.
What was it?
D?
Yeah,
That-
it's in here. Which one do you wanna get rid of?
Bruce,
Second.
where was it?
You could actually post it as agenda items and then strike by the school boards or prudential committee. And if you strike that, I believe,
Let's see, posted as an agenda item.
Oh, okay, yeah.
that have not been posted on, answers shall be deferred pending, blah, blah, blah. I
Yeah.
think that works better.
Yep.
Okay,
Consideration by, yep.
but so, back, there's no real significant changes in what we talked about wanting to have this policy, we
No.
wanted to go back through. So I'm thinking it's safe to move on
Yeah.
to, I mean, to go back to North Bennington, and if North Bennington hadn't did, I know in September it was waived, but then we talked
Yeah,
about
we
these
did.
very changes,
And we did discuss it at a subsequent board
Okay.
meeting.
and
So
so,
it's mostly
Maybe in the
missing
October.
something.
so then, with that, I think we're ready to go on and say, let's put this particular one here will be
Yep.
coming back for the adoption
Perfect.
process.
So
Okay.
I will move this along.
Okay.
Actually start going out.
This one's gonna be quick.
We've actually
I hope so. Yeah.
deleted some redundancies.
Yeah,
So-
we have.
Three
Yeah.
words.
So that's
Exactly.
good. Let's, it's
Omit
about,
this word.
it's 5:30, so I wanted to make sure we move along with everybody while Lisa's looking at that. The policy, next policy on his C, 5085, search and seizure policy. And this is on here because there were some information provided to several of the schools about an aid, using some additional aid in terms of this particular policy, and whether the policy covered it or not.
Right.
It's basically, that's general along that line, whether the policy covered something, and I think Dave got it, and Mr. Payne got that information, and I don't know whether whether the superintendent got that information or not.
Yeah.
But the best that I can understand is that the policy itself is sound, and I can have, if you wanted to talk to that now, or you wanted to wait, because,
No, I'm fine with that.
okay,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I think that this, because it is a policy, I think this is set, that this is realistic. The only substantive changes I would see is that in line 38, when it comes to a search of a student's person, it should be conducted by a school administrator, not employee. That's line 38. You know, we
You
always
may
have
want to enlarge
administrator.
that by scroll
Yeah.
and, okay,
Bottom
There
right,
you
bottom right.
yeah, right.
And in conferring with Wendy Pierce, she talked to the state and said that anything with special ed should not be included in here, that we work in conjunction with case managers and are cognizant and adhering to IEPs. It's not something that should be put in a policy on search and seizure.
Okay, that's the new information that you wanted. Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna get to you, or just wanted to make sure this particular line here got what it says. Unless an emergency situation exists, a search and seizure of a student or person will be conducted by a school
Administrator.
administrator. That's what we wanted to make sure we got that in there. Of the same
Well, we
gender.
might have to change that, because that's not always the case.
Right.
It should be with someone of the same gender, with another employee of the same gender, I would put that in, because we're probably gonna not have a female administrator. It's
Okay.
some years.
Or you might not have a male administrator.
Right,
at,
exactly, right,
at
right,
Woodford.
there you go,
Right.
either way.
Okay,
Sorry for being.
that's, okay.
could
So
work
we're-
in
we're-
any
Yes,
number
there
of
you go.
ways.
Sorry, Sandy.
So we're needing to have with
Yes, with.
with
With,
the,
um,
with the same gender.
with a school employee of the same gender as the student.
Let's see.
So then you don't need the "in,"
Let's,
the second employee.
Yeah,
That's true.
Correct.
Yeah, you're right.
okay. Let's do that. So
In
is
the
that,
presence
or
of.
in the presence of, that whole phrase.
Mhm.
let's get that straight.
What, can, yeah. Can I
Okay,
ask
we're
you a
gonna
quick
get-
question?
Yes.
Sorry to just be. What do we mean by the search of a student's person?
Clothing, that's what I would say, because we
Well,
want.
can we be specific about that in outer clothing?
Yes.
What
we
you
want to
mean
put a
is-
piece
So-
about not
so-
being intrusive, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So clothing or belongings, is that?
Mhm.
Well, certainly
Okay.
clothing, belongings are different. They're always, there's nothing intrusive about searching
Right,
a
and it
person.
says that
And it actually
line-
does
in line
say here
34.
about personal
Right.
property.
So 34, search of a student person,
I would say a
Person's
student's
property.
outer clothing instead of a student's person.
Mhm.
Do you see, because actually, if
Yes,
you're
it
gonna
would only
search
be
my
clothing,
person,
that's right.
it would,
Yeah.
you would
okay, we can.
be much more
Yeah.
intrusive
That's
than.
right. Yeah, that's
Okay.
where I put it.
So
We were gonna
once,
add another piece, but that would cover it, yeah.
so is that any more, Dave, and then before
Okay,
we start to
searches of
take any,
students, there's another place down below on 38.
before we start to take comments out here from
Yeah.
anybody? Okay.
In other words, let me just be
Person.
clear, I'm referring to a case that was already decided by the Supreme Court of the United States that basically says schools can search the outer clothing of students. What they can't do is search inner clothing of students.
Right.
There are no circumstances under which that can take place. Because in all circumstances, that's too intrusive
Mhm.
for the amount of reasonable suspicion that a school could come up with. If it's that serious, you call somebody else who can do something else, and you
Okay.
have parents involved.
So we
That's-
got with you changing the word person and saying outer clothing and then adding, the administrator with a school employee of the same gender
as the student.
covers us in that
Mhm.
particular part.
Right.
You have a comment, Laura? And,
I do, actually,
Alright.
a couple of places in how this read before. The first comment I would like to make is
You want-
that,
this is a general comment or a particular line item? You
I'm
want?
gonna start with a general comment, and then I'm going
Okay.
to go to the specific line item.
Okay,
I would actually contradict the advice received to the committee regarding this policy and failure to include anything with regards to special education students, because I too have been in contact with the Agency of Ed, who has also suggested that we do include this particular statement, and I actually have prepared one sentence that allows sort of a comprehensive type of accommodation, because it's not just children with special ed needs. It can also be children with psychological limitations, known or suspected trauma history, and it needs to be in consideration with behavioral and individual education plans, because staff members may not know that if you touch this child, they are so adverse to being touched. Or if you try to forcibly ask them to turn out their pockets, or they don't even want to be in a room alone with you. So you really don't have that information on board. And actually, this provides protection to not just the student, but also to the staff. And, because it would just take one incident that could lead us down the path of litigation that wouldn't be advantageous.
So just before I get to that, I want to make sure that's a lot. And I wanted to make sure how I manage that in terms of that information. So somebody out here is providing information. So as far as the task force here, we're going to have somebody in the administrations dig and get that information so that document from that person before we make the change to put that in as, because the outcome is what you're saying has a larger impact than one that just inserted in here. We need to do some additional research on that particular part before we put it in there.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
I'd like to add something.
Go add something to.
Yes, well, the premise that she's working from is that the person who's searching the child would not know that that child is a special needs child, and from what this says, it's the administrator. So I don't know any administrator who wouldn't know that that child wasn't a special needs child.
That's true. I mean, along it shouldn't be. And with somebody of a similar, I mean, in terms of the matter here. But I'm saying, what I wanted to do is, what Laura's saying, that somebody somewhere is saying, put it in there.
I think.
And we're saying, we want to know.
Wendy. Yeah, I think I would refer it to Wendy Pierce. I mean,
We would want to have the administrative person, Wendy Pierce, be responsible for verification of this, because she handles the special ed, as to whether the state regulations are saying you need to put this in here in the search and seizure piece, or it needs to be somewhere else. I just wanted to make sure I cleared it up before we went on to anything else. Is that something that we can do? And we'll make a note for Wendy to take a look at that.
And it would be helpful if you have a reference or a citation that you could provide as well to the source
Oh,
of
sure.
that
Actually, I believe that those were provided already, so I could be
But
misinformed.
we'll have Wendy speak to that part, and that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying. Here's a
absolutely.
part of a piece of a policy that we need to have the administrative person that's responsible for that area make sure that they hear and understand what's taking place before we make a change in that area.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so everybody can agree that. You have a line comment now.
I do, because,
Okay.
because it's been changed, I really want to ask about line 38. I also had an issue with the student's person.
So line 38, what is it that you?
Well, it's been corrected. It's search of a student's person. You clarified that to
Okay.
be outside clothing. The second question or comment I would like to make, in the presence of a second employee, nowhere in this does it have sort of like sensitivity, kind of, to, it just says second employee, but did you change that to include someone specific? Because it doesn't really say, I mean, the presence of a second employee, it doesn't really define who that is. It could be the janitor for all I know, as a parent. Is it someone who has training? Is it the school nurse? Is it the,
Well, let's talk to that. I think
My
there's
first
two
impression-
rationales behind that.
What I would do, and I can only speak for the high school, is I would have the lady who works with me, who's done this for years, and who is part of our security management team do it, or Ms. McGuire, or the school nurse. That's what we'd do. It wouldn't just be someone would just take off the hallway, no.
So, okay, so what you then asking, should we put something in there besides another, the way we have it here, with a school employee of the same gender? I mean, if not, I mean, I think,
Trained?
well, you're right, a trained person or whatever, if you wanted to change the wording or add one.
I only throw that up because I'm wondering, what training do you?
Yeah.
Right.
Because the
You don't.
person, the administrator
Yeah.
will be there to walk the person through it. That's pretty commonsensical.
Okay.
True.
So that's what we're saying, and we don't have to, I mean, and we're not saying that we wanna put in there that it's gonna be an administrator, even though that's
That'd be my first priority.
the
Sure.
priority is to do this.
They may not be available that day.
Right.
Right. So I don't think we'll be making any changes right there, right, at
Not
this
yet,
moment in
anyway.
this time.
Okay, so
Okay.
can I make the final,
Yes?
question I have on that paragraph is line 40. It says, under conditions intended to reasonably protect the modesty and dignity of the student.
Right.
When it comes to modesty, if you're not searching underlying clothing, why would that need to be in there?
I think that was just
Simply because
wording,
it's not out in the middle of the office.
right.
I mean, just, it's
Right.
in everybody walking by can't see it.
What?
Well, should it say
that's-
confidentiality?
okay.
Could I,
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean,
Let
so
me-
Lisa, you got, the part of it you're saying here in terms of that, and that's true, is saying we don't want it to be in the middle of the public and so forth out here. That's what that's, I think that's meaning, and Bruce has some,
well, I have an
Okay, Bruce.
alternative.
he has some
Word.
alternative words. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say to protect the privacy interests and dignity of the student. That's the language which
That's
is
what's
used.
intended by
Okay.
that. yeah.
And that's really
Yeah.
what I think we need.
Doesn't change the sense of it, that's,
No, it
that's
doesn't.
more specific.
And it's the language which courts use all the time. It's the privacy interests.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
Yep.
and dignity of the student.
and
Okay.
I like the word dignity.
All right.
My final comment was on line 75. Do we have this statement at the end of every policy? Copies of this policy will be distributed to students when they enroll in school, and this policy
It's
will
in
be
the-
included.
We include in the handbook, yeah.
It's in there.
Is this,
Not,
is
not
that
at this
statement?
length, we don't, not the
All the
entire.
policies
not
don't
everything,
have it.
No.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we were trying not to, I mean,
Yeah.
It-
This one I think
duplicate
is
so
of
much
particular-
information, but this one here needed it.
Yeah. And there's a
And-
section on search and seizure in our handbook that
Right,
addresses that.
right, and that's why this is going in that manner.
So why do we indicate that copies of this policy aren't,
Will be.
So-
We say
Okay.
will be distributed to students when they are enrolled in the school. This is one of those policies
okay.
that, that is identified as being needed to have
Mhm.
presented itself in this manner so that we
Yep.
can protect the district and make sure everybody's aware of, there is a procedure, there is a search and seizure process that could go on in the school system, and that's necessary to make sure that everybody's aware of that, without the exception. So, I was gonna say here, if that's, when I wanted to make sure we got to the, our tracking sheet, I think that pretty much clears up all that, except for it needs to still wait for a Wendy Pierce,
Yep.
review. Bruce?
Yes,
Yep.
one other question, and it may require that review as well. We refer back to line 38 or that paragraph to the personal property. Do we need to make any other stipulation for electronic devices?
Well, that was the one that was coming
That's-
along
yeah,
that
Frank
we,
is working on that one.
that, yes, and I thought that was generated by
And that is a.
public
That's a
interest,
big
I
one.
mean,
That's a big
It's
man,
a
I
huge
mean,
issue and nobody knows what the answers are.
right, I think, I'm trying to see who said something at one of the other previous meetings that that was opening up a can of worms to be able to get into that,
Yeah. Well,
to
if
use
it's already
an
being
external
if it's
device
already
for
under
that, as an
consideration,
aid.
that's fine with me.
Right.
Right.
And so right now, we're not including that, and we're not making any changes.
Part of it's
in
covered
terms
by the
of-
computer policy, if they're using school computers, but the whole thing about personal phones varies from state to state, and some states, schools can confiscate a phone and, you know, and look through it if it's a danger or whatever, but
Right.
it's still out there.
There's all sorts of current case law about this and it's just all in flux, so I wouldn't, you know, yeah.
I wouldn't touch it.
Right, we're not gonna,
It's-
we're
I
not
think we
gonna
need
add
to
that
know
in.
much
Right.
more.
You have one other item,
On line 59, it referred to the board's policy on interrogations by law enforcement officers. Did the committee want to put a policy reference to the particular policy And the name of the policy is interrogations by law enforcement officers, social workers, and something else, and I didn't know if you needed to clean that up at all.
Is it at the end? I don't know whether it's at the end.
It is not.
It's
It
not
should
referenced.
be.
No, it's
No.
not on this
No.
one there.
It should be.
We can do that.
It should be.
We can do that, yes.
It's easy to do.
Yep.
In terms of referencing
Wait a little
that,
bit.
that particular piece has already got another policy out there. I don't remember, you mentioned the
Yeah.
policy number, I don't remember what it is,
I didn't write it down.
either,
Yeah,
but
it
it's,
should
be.
it's one out there,
You know
interrogation
what it
of
is.
students by law enforcement, yes.
It's,
It should always be there.
So Dick may have it here.
5090.
5090, policy 5090 should be referenced in
Yeah.
that section, thank you.
You have it right there?
He has it,
References,
Yes.
right.
There's no information.
yes,
Yep.
that's it, right there, 5090, you saying, okay.
I will clean this up.
Interrogations by blah, 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 blah. We know.
Yeah, and you put the name down, and you just to save you some time right there, the whole thing, it's a long,
Yeah.
Interrogation or searches of
Okay.
Yeah.
students
Why
by
don't
law
we do that?
enforcement. No said the whole
Yeah.
thing there.
Yeah.
Just interrogations by law enforcement.
Okay.
Et cetera.
So she's gonna put something else there for
Yeah.
that and so forth. All right, thank you. I mean, these are the three main pieces that we've
That's the
gone through
substance
here,
of
and
it.
this has been great. And, this last one has an action item that, for Wendy on and so forth from an administrative point of view. And so if we have about 10 minutes really to do something, I'd like to look at that tracking sheet just to have us see where it is, where things are on there, and real quick. We often get to the very end and then our tracking sheet was sent, oh, we'll take care of it, but let's just take a brief look at that real quick and then we can have
Let's
call
try
it a
to
night.
cover your information.
Yes.
Oh, come on, please, machine.
Thinking hard.
Oh, Microsoft Word, you're so lovely.
It's
Okay,
amazing
there we
how
go.
we have no patience now for just a few seconds of time
I know.
when it comes to
Yep.
electronics.
I have a procedural question, if I may. How does that get relayed to Wendy from this committee? Does that go out like in
We
a
have,
formal?
a representation here from the administration that is responsible in the minutes, I mean, what we're doing here with Lisa in terms of, that as well. will
That's why we now
take
bring
place.
Lisa to the policy committee meeting, because it has cut
That's-
down on those losses. She wasn't here at policy meetings last year, so
Right.
Yep.
her notes will reflect that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to schedule, we'll get together and she'll pass that on in terms of procedure, she'll get that on to Wendy, and then Wendy will, be prepared, and then we'll schedule it back here, maybe with her for comments, or with some documentation along that line, but it'll be back here. So this one, 5085 will be back on the agenda, depending on
Right.
the response from Wendy in terms of how long it would take her to be able to dig into that information in a timely
Right.
manner. Okay.
And I'll hold Bruce responsible for tracking that.
Yeah, in a timely manner.
So at this point, 5085 is
Still on the
holding.
agenda.
It's still holding.
Well,
Yeah.
we do further, okay.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Very good.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is clear that up and make sure that's holding, the other two are moving on.
They can go out for adoption.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
So if we look at this,
Something small, but-
again, this is small. I know we can't
It
get
is.
that whole sheet on
If,
it.
yeah, I mean, if I make it smaller, it might be way harder to read.
No,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
can
it's
read
too
anything
small,
right
maybe
now.
too small. So, attendance policy is on here, and
That's not done?
I think
there was I think there was something between the middle school and the high school. Was that correct in terms of, Mr. Payne, the number of days?
Right, we gotta get the middle school piece.
Okay,
Right.
so there should be some comment about, we're needing input, if, I can't just highlight it, but we're needing input from the middle school. and the high school in terms of what it is that they wanna change in terms of the regulations there, in terms of what makes sense for absent and tardiness and
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yep.
So that's the comment. Is that what's in that comment that's
It says
highlighted?
being updated by MAU is what's in that comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the,
Okay.
that,
I'll
okay, so
verify.
that was, MAU is that, but there was the difference between the middle school and the high school
Yeah.
in terms of the severity of what was happening out there, so.
Right.
But
Okay,
those warning dates were quite a while ago. Then.
right,
Yes.
and so we're gonna have to get,
Yeah.
either that on the education committee for the high school, we're gonna have to do something, we're gonna have
Yeah,
to get
it's
that on.
2012,
Yeah.
they were warned? Holy
Yeah.
smokes.
Yeah,
All in February or March.
that's policy
Well, we'll only be up to 3 years
50-30.
soon.
50-30. So 50-30 needs to get on MAU,
Yeah.
education committee.
And that new committee needs to meet.
I think they're having a meeting coming up on some course approval, so I think that's coming.
Okay.
That's why we wanted to go through this.
Okay.
All right, the next one is,
That's been posted.
okay,
Anaphylaxis?
That,
that's conflict of anaphylaxis, is that, what's out there? It says two,
Going back to the
nurses.
going back to the nurse for review.
okay,
I have a connection there, I can find out what her problem is.
he has it.
Did I say that?
Out loud and recorded.
Ouch.
Okay.
Not me. Find out about that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah, so we'll need to get that squared away. Dick's gonna do that.
That's been posted.
Okay,
It's all done, said, done.
5140, is that what that is? That?
Yes, and that's been posted.
Okay. And the
Okay.
next one was 40.
20, which we
We
worked
just
on
did
tonight.
something on just now.
Yeah, that's going out now
Yep.
for final adoption.
And I thought professional development was on there, and I thought we took care of what was of concern in the administrative regs in terms of the review of what was being asked. If we didn't, and I think,
Okay.
It had to do
I
with,
will-
didn't it? That one had
Approval
to do
of-
with approval with, particularly when they've got devices.
right, and I thought we took care of that, and we
I
said that
thought
that
that
was.
was done too.
And I will look at it again and,
It
if
may
so,
be.
get it warned. I mean,
Yeah.
get it out for warning.
Well, it may not be.
It may- it
not
wasn't
have
any
been-
changes
May not have
to
been
it.
any changes to policy, we may have
Right.
resolved it in
I
the
thought
administrative
that
regs.
was the case. I thought there were no changes, because I've
Right.
seen that come across my desk. but-
Yeah. I
Right, it
think
wasn't a
that's
change,
exactly-
you said that needed
that's
to be in
exactly
some
correct.
kind of administrative piece if we wanted to
Right.
do that, but it wasn't a change to the policy,
Exactly.
so that should be
No
okay.
policy changes
Okay.
recommended.
Ready to clean and post.
Grade adjustment.
Grade advancement is going around
Yes,
For adoption,
warning.
warning.
really?
Yes,
Okay. Oh, you're right, I see.
okay, yes, I know it just hit, into Northman is 1112, it's gonna be out there, so,
Oh, you're gonna do it, it's coming up.
okay. What's the next one on there?
Coming year that you're coming up next.
I don't think that, I mean, it was added, but I don't think anything's ever been done as far as the background check.
No, and we're not ready to do anything on that, I don't think.
I
so.
don't think we will, yeah.
Do you want it left on the list?
Yes,
Okay.
and let's see here, public participation, we just did that.
Yep.
Let's see, this is, I can't,
It's, school building enrollment zone, that's just a BSD policy.
yes, they took care of that, and that was an FYI for everybody
Right.
to make sure it goes along with all the policies, and so
Yeah.
that, for that, we just now talked, is that search and seizure the next one?
Yeah.
Next on the search and seizure.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't print it out,
Let's see.
thanks.
I always do in case something goes wrong.
The
Okay.
next one is bullying prevention. It was
Adults,
supposed to have, be going out for legal review.
right. And so I don't know where it is, that's what's supposed to have been going, because we were talking about that, and
Yeah.
I thought we had did we get something back in terms of?
You'll be
of
happy to know that the legislature is looking at this again. And they're actually looking about, I hate to say this, but we just had a professional development day on this, and bullying and harassment are being looked at about
One to put it
being
back
putting
together.
all back together
Together.
into one, of course, because it's been a while since we've tried to redo this all over again, so.
So we won't
I
take
would
any-
hold off until.
Yeah, no action right now for that one then.
And actually, the legal review, it was being requested as adult versus student bullying.
That's right, that's right,
And
We put that in.
Yeah,
right. That's what we were wanting to do. And I know we talked about adults and having to be hired, contracted employees and had some different guidelines for going on and so forth. So that's why it's having to do all this other stuff.
yeah.
Verbal and physical assault on an employee, 50, 65, we haven't done anything for
Nope.
additional there. Weapon prohibition, nothing there to take up. Fundraising, is that, we're talking about, I mean, we put that out there. I don't know whether we needed to do anything with the fundraising here or not yet. But it's on there to be considered for review, and whether, as we start to do things and our agenda get low, we'll probably move some of these up and say, let's just
Yeah.
open them up for discussion in here
Yeah.
to see whether we need to do anything. And I think that telecommunication policy 6140,
Frank and I
Frank
were
is
supposed
saying,
to-
he, that's.
We were
Frank
supposed to be,
approved.
we haven't had a chance yet.
Okay, and so I was.
We will,
Okay, we'll think about
as
that
a
for next month.
Thanksgiving gift.
Okay. And then the next one, 6230, curriculum-based field trips. And I'm trying to see,
Yeah,
what did
well,
we
it was
stop on that?
Tim and-
That should be all set.
Tim and Dave.
Yeah, I don't remember there being anything left on that one. What
I-
was hanging in the air?
I thought we was all set with that one
I did
too.
I did too.
Okay. All right. And so, no, we didn't change anything there. So, it's about 2 of 6. As always, I want to commit to the time limit that we said that we were gonna work it here as 4:30 to 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock we're gonna depart. We have, one agenda item on, for next time, search and seizure to be on the agenda, and I'll meet with Lisa. We'll look at other stuff to be added on to here along this
We may
line.
be there, because our policy's gonna be short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
See, the telecommunications and networking is actually gonna, right now, it's a really
That's-
big policy,
they're
which
huge.
is,
So it
we're
was-
gonna
it's a
actually,
huge policy.
yeah, and we're actually gonna make them short.
so that was what was gonna be on for the
And
next
change
agenda.
that, right.
Is that, those two, search and seizure, a telecommunication policy, and some others that may need to be out there. So, once again, I wanna thank everybody for their input. This has always been a healthy environment and discussion and being real productive. So, with that in mind, I wanna say that, see you next month. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.